Hey guys, tonight we board a pirate ship. Not the Hollywood kind with polished boots and CGI storms, but the actual floating hellscape of splinters, sweat, and something sour stewing beneath the floorboards. You grab the rope ladder, swing over the side, and immediately regret taking a deep breath. The air is warm, heavy, and soaked in decades of human residue. It smells like if a fish market had a love child with a high school locker room during a heat wave. You duck under a tangle of rigging, the deck slick beneath your bare feet, and you try not to think about what made it slick. Welcome to your new life at sea. The smell alone is enough to knock the romance out of piracy faster than a cannonball through a hammock. You probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop a comment with your location and what time it is where you're listening. I love seeing where you all are drifting off from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You drudge across the deck, trying to make peace with your surroundings. The boards creak with every step, like the ship itself is groaning under the weight of old sins. The sea rolls under you in slow, rhythmic pulses, and you try to match your breath to it. But that air, it sticks to your teeth like guilt, to your... No one talks about this part. When people think of pirates, they imagine treasure maps, parrots, swashbuckling. They forget that pirates lived in close quarters with dozens of other men for weeks or even months without touching land. And during those stretches, hygiene was, let's say, not the priority. You pass a man hunched over a barrel, vomiting quietly into it. Next to him, someone else is asleep on a pile of damp rope, mouth open, flies buzzing around like it's happy hour. You wrinkle your nose, but there's nowhere to go that smells better. This is home now, in the captain's quarters. Someone's hung up what might be a lavender sachet, likely stolen from a merchant ship. It's trying its best, bless it, but it's like spraying perfume in a sewage tunnel. Now let's talk about your new bed. It's not a bed, it's a hammock stained with salt and other less identifiable fluids. You swing into it cautiously. The cloth is scratchy, something crawls over your ankle. You tell yourself it's just the ship settling. You close your eyes, but the ship groans again, and now the guy next to you is snoring like a dying walrus. Sleep will not come easy, but it will come. Because exhaustion always wins, but even dreams can't escape the smell. See, pirates didn't have soap. Not the nice kind, anyway. Maybe some lye. Maybe a greasy ball of animal fat if they were lucky, or unlucky, depending on how you feel about rubbing beef tallow into your skin. And there were no toothbrushes, no toothpaste, just bad breath and worse teeth, the kind of breath that could strip paint, the kind of smile that made babies cry and parrots swear. You start to wonder if anyone here has all their teeth. But before we dive into your dental nightmares, consider this. Many pirates had already been through prison, press gangs, starvation, or war before ever setting foot on a ship. The sea was just the next bad idea in a long list of them. They brought with them broken teeth, infected gums, and habits that would make a raccoon say, "Dude, gross." And don't get too attached to the water barrels. What little fresh water exists is usually saved for cooking or mixing with grog, a drink that's basically watered down rum. So yeah, if you were hoping for a nice glass of clean water to rinse your hands, better luck next life. Historians still argue whether pirates were uniquely gross or just average for their time. After all, most people in the 17th century weren't exactly bathing daily. But pack a bunch of unwashed men onto a wooden ship in tropical heat, and things escalate quickly. You reach for a mug of grog. It smells like betrayal and tastes worse, but it's better than the alternative, dying of thirst, or trying to drink rainwater out of a moldy sail. So you sip, and you breathe through your mouth, and you try not to gag when a fellow pirate plops down next to you and starts picking something, hopefully a bug, out of his beard. This is the glamour you signed up for. One final note before you try again to drift off. Even pirates joked about their own stink. There are scattered records of ships nicknamed things like the floating dunghill and the stink pot. You'd laugh if you weren't busy wondering if the ship's cat just peed on your boot. Eventually, your nose starts to go numb. Not physically, just spiritually. It gives up, resigns itself to the new normal. You close your eyes again, let the sway of the ship rock you, and try not to think about the fact that something's nibbling on the rope just below your head. You wake up groggy, not from a good night's rest, but because your hammock dumped you sideways when someone bumped past. Your neck's at a weird angle. Your back feels like it's been folded into origami, and your mouth tastes like salted leather left in the sun. You sit up and smack your lips. Something's off. Well, more off than usual. You run your tongue along your teeth and feel something crumbly. That's not normal. But here it kind of is. You step out onto the deck, shielding your eyes from the blinding sun. The air is thick with sweat and sea spray. Around you, pirates grunt, curse and hawk loogies overboard with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for cheering at sword fights. It hits you again. No one here brushes their teeth. No one can. Toothbrushes, as we think of them today, weren't standard pirate gear. The idea of using a handled bristle tool to clean your teeth didn't hit Western Europe until the late 1600s, and even then, it was for the rich or the weird. Pirates were neither. You peer into a cracked mirror nailed to a mast. Your teeth look fine, sort of. But that's the trick, isn't it? Rot doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It creeps quietly. Most pirates didn't even try to clean their teeth. They chewed on things, bones, tobacco, bits of rope. Some rubbed their gums with their fingers or rinsed with seawater. One or two maybe used soot, salt, or ashes to scrub. But let's be honest, they probably did that once, said, ugh, and never again. You see a guy gnawing on a chicken bone like it owes him money. He's got a gap-toothed smile that somehow manages to be both menacing and endearing. You nod politely and look away. He grins wider. His gums are bleeding. There's a myth that pirates chose to ignore hygiene. Truth is, they didn't always have a choice. When you're focused on not dying from cannon fire, starvation, or being tossed overboard in a storm, brushing your teeth ranks low on the list. And they didn't exactly have Colgate sponsorships. Historians still argue whether pirates truly had worse teeth than landlubbers. On one hand, the sea diet was terrible. On the other, they didn't eat a ton of refined sugar, which actually helped. Your average pirate might have had fewer cavities than a French noble drowning in candied figs. But sugar wasn't the only enemy. Salted meat, acidic grog, and plain old malnutrition chipped away at enamel like barnacles on a hull. You might start your career with a full smile, but by your third voyage, you're lucky to chew without whimpering. Still, there were pirates who tried. Some swished with rum. Some even carried toothpicks made from thorns or fish bones. Not out of vanity, just practicality. Pain in your jaw could mess with your aim, your sleep, even your place in the crew. There's a superstition, too. Losing a front tooth was bad luck. Some old sailors believed it drained your fighting spirit. Others thought it let in evil winds. Either way, a missing front tooth wasn't just a cosmetic issue. It could mess with morale. You chew on a piece of hardtack, trying not to crack a molar. It's like biting into a fossil. The biscuit's older than some of the crew, and it's crawling with weevils. You pretend not to notice. Everyone does. That's part of life now. Pretending. Pretending you don't see the maggots in the salt pork. Pretending that green tinge on the biscuit is just sea seasoning. Pretending that the blood in your spit is nothing. One pirate slaps you on the back and offers a bite of something grey. You ask what it is. He shrugs. Don't ask. Just chew with the left side. You start to notice things. The way some pirates talk with their mouths half closed. How they tilt their heads when chewing, favoring one side. The sudden wince when someone laughs too hard. There's a man they call Grinner. Not because he smiles, but because his jaw is stuck in a weird grimace from an old tooth infection that never healed right. He has a permanent sneer and smells like a dead eel. Nice guy, though, gave you his extra socks. Your gums start to feel sore. Maybe it's just the salt. Maybe it's scurvy. Maybe it's nothing. But you can't stop poking at the ache with your tongue. It's like your mouth has become its own haunted house. And then there's the morning breath. You think your own is bad. Wait till you get a full yawn from the guy bunking next to you. It's like being slapped by a kelp ghost. You start keeping a bit of fabric over your nose at night, which kind of helps. Kind of. You remember a story someone told. A pirate who lost all his teeth but kept fighting with a knife in his mouth. He gummed it. You laugh, but there's a part of you that wonders, was that guy brave or just desperate? It makes you think about what you'd look like in 10 years if you stayed aboard. Will your teeth fall out one by one like coins from a broken purse? Will you be the next grinner, warning new recruits not to chew with their bad side? The thought doesn't keep you awake, not because it's not scary, but because the waves and the exhaustion take over again. And as you close your eyes, you wonder, when the legends talk about pirate smiles, are they remembering the gold or the gaps? You're chewing again, not because you're hungry, but because that's what everyone does on deck when there's nothing else to do. Chew something, anything, a bit of tobacco leaf, the end of a rope, maybe even that same piece of hardtack you started an hour ago. This time it splits clean down the middle. Not the biscuit, your tooth. A sharp, hot pain shoots through your jaw and you freeze mid-chew, eyes watering. Welcome to the true horror of pirate cuisine. Let's talk about hardtack, the lovingly nicknamed toothbreaker. It's what happens when you bake flour and water into a brick, forget seasoning, and then leave it in a barrel for 6 months. Bonus protein? Weevils. If the biscuit isn't moving, it's stale. If it is moving, well, at least it's fresh. You bite again, cautiously. The pain flares. You stop chewing. The guy next to you slaps your shoulder and laughs. First blood? Took you long enough. The thing is, you'll keep eating it. Everyone does. You need calories and hardtack stores well. Plus, the weevils, extra protein. You pretend they're raisins. This is the pirate's paradox. Your food keeps you alive while slowly destroying you from the inside. There's a legend told quietly on ships like these. They say a sailor once broke his jaw on a hardtack biscuit, spat out a molar, and decided to carry it around for luck. He was later promoted to quartermaster. Now, half the crew carry their broken teeth in pouches, just in case. You look around, and it starts to make sense. That guy with the swollen cheek, probably a molar gone bad. That one mumbling with a scarf around his jaw? Infected gums, no doubt. No one talks about it much. It's just accepted. Like splinters or hangings, historians still argue whether pirate food was deliberately cruel or just practical. Most agree that hardtack wasn't a tea meant to be eaten as is. It was supposed to be soaked in water, stew, or beer to soften it. But when you're out of all three, you just gnaw and pray. There are some tricks, though. Some pirates, desperate to avoid dental agony, would hammer the biscuits into powder and mix it with whatever liquid they had. Grog, maybe, or fish broth. One unlucky guy even tried chewing it with cloth wrapped around his teeth like a buffer. He lost the cloth, and eventually a tooth. You rub your jaw again. It's sore now, swollen. You know what's coming. It's called dry rot of the gums. A charming little condition where your teeth wiggle loose, your breath could stop a charging horse, and your mouth tastes like a rusted anchor chain. But you're not alone. Around you, everyone's dealing with it. Even the captain, who you once thought looked regal with his gold tooth, now grimaces when he chews. The gold's just a cap. Underneath, it's all black and crumbling. There's no dentist on board, no one to poke around your gums with a sterile pick. If your tooth goes bad, your options are two: yank it out or live with it. Neither's pleasant. You remember what someone said last night over a game of dice? Every missing tooth buys you silence during the pain. Poetic in a disturbing sort of way. You watch a guy boiling water in an old tin cup. He's dropped a bit of tobacco in it, says it'll numb the ache. He sloshes the brownish liquid around his mouth, spits it overboard, and sighs. Then he immediately lights another chew. That's pirate medicine for you. Some ships had slightly better setups. A ship surgeon, if you were lucky, and if he wasn't blind, drunk, or bleeding from somewhere himself, he'd yank out the bad ones with metal tongs. No anesthesia. Just bite down on a stick and try not to scream too loud. You wince just thinking about it. And yet, there are worse things. A tooth infection that spreads into the bloodstream could kill a man. Slow, painful, and with a swelling so bad it looked like his head would burst. One guy, everyone called him Lantern Jaw, had an abscess the size of a plum. They say he went delirious, tried to carve the infection out himself with a spoon, died with it still in his hand. No one used that spoon again. So now you're faced with a decision. Your molar's cracked. It's going to fester. You can wait it out and hope it falls out clean, or find someone with strong hands and a decent grip on a pair of pliers. You look over at Grinner. He notices, raises his eyebrows. He's done this before, probably enjoys it too much. Suddenly, the idea of just chewing on the other side seems manageable. And yet, you know this is only the beginning. You haven't even made it through the first week. The waves slap against the hull, the skies turning that soft lavender of pre-dawn. Somewhere below deck, a man is already moaning in his sleep. Jaw pain, probably. Or bad dreams, or both. You spit a small amount of blood over the railing. It hits the ocean with a quiet plop. Another day begins on the sea. Another day without a toothbrush, with biscuits that bite back. And you smile grimly through the pain, feeling the sharp edge of your cracked molar like a secret waiting to explode. You wake with a jolt, half dreaming that your teeth have all crumbled out like wet chalk. Your jaw is sore again, and there's a dull throb behind your eyes, as if your skull's quietly protesting the conditions on board. You wipe your mouth, and yes, there's blood. Not much, but enough to remind you. This isn't a nightmare, it's just Tuesday on a pirate ship. Today, you decide to try something, anything. Maybe a desperate little experiment in personal upkeep. You ask around for suggestions. Most laugh. One guy offers you a handful of ash from the stove. "Scrub with this," he grins. "Don't swallow unless you hate yourself." So here you are, crouched on deck beside a rain barrel, dabbing your finger into cold ash and rubbing it across your teeth like you're polishing ancient treasure. It tastes like regret and fireplace soot. But weirdly, your mouth feels slightly cleaner. Some pirates swore by this method. Ash, salt, even crushed shells. If you're lucky, there's a bit of mint in the mix, if someone happened to loot a merchant carrying herbs. But mint was rare. Most days, you're flavoring your mouth with burnt wood and wishful thinking. You notice the deckhand beside you dragging a frayed rope across his gums, just grinding it back and forth like a horse with a chew toy. He says it scrapes off the rot. You don't argue. He's got more teeth than most. Historians still debate whether this counts as an actual hygiene method or just superstition. But then again, much of pirate life blurs the line between practicality and desperation. If it stung, it probably meant it was working. That was the rule of thumb. Later that morning, you spot something odd. A pirate, shirtless, tattooed, missing an ear, picks up a nail and starts carving at his teeth, just casually. He's sharpening the tips one by one. You ask why. Intimidation, he shrugs, also helps with cracking crab shells. You decide not to sit next to him at dinner. That afternoon, someone offers you a truly cursed alternative. Chew on coal, not charcoal. Actual blackened lumps of who knows what scraped out of the fire pit. You try it. It's like licking a chimney. But your breath feels slightly less deadly afterward, so maybe it's a win. That evening, you overhear two crewmates arguing about the proper way to clean teeth. One insists you need to heat the ash first. That cold ash makes your tongue go numb. The other swears by salt water and lemon juice. Except lemons are rarer than honest pirates, so he mostly uses vinegar. You don't get involved. There are no experts here, just survivors. Still, you start to notice the small routines. One guy dips a twig into brine and chews it till it frays. Another stores a bone splinter behind his ear for midday gum scrubbing. It's not pretty, but it's something. And something feels powerful out here, where most things are out of your control. At dinner, someone passes around jerky that could double as boot leather. You take small bites, chewing carefully with your good side. The guy across from you doesn't bother. He grinds down with full force and you hear a crack. He winces but keeps going. Everyone around him pretends not to notice. You remember what the cook said earlier? Pain's part of the seasoning. You spend part of the night near the stern, under the stars, scraping your nails along your gums to check for swelling. There's some. It's tender, but not terrible. You start to wonder if the pirates who had decent teeth were just freaks of nature. Maybe they had strong enamel. Maybe they didn't live long enough for rot to win. Maybe they bribed the tooth fairy with gold doubloons. The truth is, oral hygiene didn't start evolving into an actual science until long after the golden age of piracy. You're basically a human experiment in what happens when you combine zero brushing, high-salt diets, and infinite stress. You think about what this ship might look like if someone did have modern dental tools. Imagine pulling out a sleek electric toothbrush among these guys. They'd think it was black magic. They'd probably toss you overboard just to be safe. Still, as the stars blink overhead and the ship creaks its lullaby, you try to remind yourself, even these crude methods meant something. They were a gesture, a tiny rebellion against rot, stink, and decay. Even pirates, crusty as they were, understood that teeth mattered. Not for beauty, for survival. And you rub more ash along your back molars. You spit overboard. And as you watch the dark water swallow it whole, you quietly hope it'll be enough to get you through another week without needing pliers. The morning sun crawls up the mast as you stretch your jaw and immediately regret it. Something clicks, something pulses. You spit over the side of the ship again. This time it's pink. Normal now. You've stopped reacting to it. You figure it's time to try a pirate classic. You grab a small tin mug, slosh in a bit of rum, swish, and hope for the best. It burns like betrayal. Rum, it turns out, isn't just for toasting victory or drowning sorrow. On ships like this, it doubles as disinfectant, painkiller, and makeshift mouthwash. You swish it around like a dentist told you to. If that dentist also happened to be a one-eyed smuggler named Knuckle Pete. The burn fades, and you're left with a warmth that radiates down your neck. You spit overboard and grimace. It worked. Sort of. At least it feels like you did something. You look around and realize others are doing the same. One guy's taken it to another level. He's got a small corked bottle of something cloudy, rumored to be medicinal rum, which smells like kerosene and regret. He rinses with it after every meal, and his gums are still intact, which by pirate standards makes him basically a dental god. Historians still argue whether pirates really used rum for hygiene or if that's a romantic myth. The truth is likely both. When you've got nothing else, and your gums are swelling like bruised fruit, rum's as good an idea as any. And let's be honest, pirates didn't need much encouragement to pour alcohol into their mouths. Turning it into oral care just made it sound noble. But there's a side effect, one you notice quickly. Your tongue goes numb, and for a few minutes, everything tastes like burnt sugar and smoke. Then it wears off, and you're back to tasting the sea, the sweat, and the endless salt that coats every surface like powdered despair. Still, it's a ritual now. Swish, spit, grimace. Swish, spit, grimace. A routine, and routines are rare and precious at sea. That afternoon, someone breaks out a new method. They crush cloves and soak them in grog. It's spicy. One sip and your whole mouth tingles. The man who made it says it's to stop the rot, but you suspect he just enjoys the burning. Cloves, by the way, were used in ancient medicine to dull tooth pain, and pirates, scavengers of the seas, picked up tricks from wherever they docked. India, Africa, the Caribbean. If it numbed, if it soothed, if it didn't kill you immediately, it earned a spot in the oral survival toolkit. You overhear a conversation later, two pirates betting over who has the best mouth. One flashes a grin, revealing 6 intact teeth and a gold cap. The other, toothless but with perfect pink gums, just nods. They all fell out clean, no screaming, he says proudly. There's a weird sort of honor among the toothless, like veterans comparing scars. If your mouth is still a war zone, you're a rookie. If it's just smooth gums now, you're a survivor. You meet one old sailor with a trick of his own. He rinses with seawater mixed with crushed coral powder. Feels like glass, he says with a grin. He shows you his teeth, yellowed but whole. You're both impressed and a little terrified. It's easy to forget that oral pain shapes behavior. Grumpier pirates, probably just dealing with a rotten molar. Quiet ones could be an abscess brewing. Even fights have started because someone couldn't eat their share of rations and was accused of slacking. The chain of survival goes through your jaw. You try another rinse that night, this time weaker rum, mixed with a pinch of salt and a sprig of something vaguely minty. Maybe it's basil, maybe it's seaweed. Whatever it is, it doesn't make things worse. You lean on the rail, letting the ship rock beneath you. You imagine your old life, solid ground, warm baths, toothbrushes. Now you're spitting bootleg cocktails over the side of a stolen ship, praying your teeth hold another week. And despite everything, you almost feel clean. Just a little. Your gums still throb. Your tongue is raw from too much swishing, but something about the ritual comforts you. The pain has structure now. The suffering is scheduled, and that weirdly makes it bearable. The next morning, you wake to something new. A tooth is loose. Not just wiggles when you touch it loose. No, this one shifts when you breathe wrong. It moves like a door in the wind, barely hanging on, and every time your tongue brushes it, it sends a jolt of sharp ache through your skull. You sit up slowly, clutching your jaw like it's a grenade. This isn't the kind of thing you ignore. Not on a pirate ship, where every health issue either gets ignored until you drop dead, or handled with something rusty and terrible. You make your way to the quarterdeck, squinting against the sun, and scan the crowd for help. Not a doctor. You won't find one here. What you're looking for is someone with strong hands, a thick stomach, and no fear of blood. And there he is, Big Jack. Big Jack isn't he officially the ship's dentist? There is no such thing. But he is the guy everyone goes to when a tooth turns traitor. He carries a pair of iron pliers tucked into his belt and has a twisted sense of humor. His success rate is above average, which is pirate speak for you might live. You don't approach him just yet. Not until it gets worse. Instead, you try chewing on the other side. You try not eating, you try not talking. None of it works. The tooth owns you now. Every heartbeat pulses in your jaw like a war drum. You sip rum, and it flares like fire. You spit pink again. By nightfall, you can't take it anymore. You find Jack near the anchor chain, filing his fingernails with a knife. You tell him the situation. He grins, stands up, and nods. Right then, rope or plank? You choose rope. He ties a bit around your tooth and fastens the other end to a barrel. You sit. You close your eyes. And then, with no warning, he kicks the barrel overboard. Snap. It's out. The pain is lightning. You scream, not from the yank, but from the rush of nerves screaming back. You taste blood. But the pressure's gone, and in a twisted way, it feels better. Big Jack slaps your back, drops the tooth into your palm, and walks away like he's just finished peeling an orange. You sit for a long time, spitting blood into a rag. The stars are just starting to poke through the dark sky. Somewhere, someone is playing a shanty on a fiddle with one string too many. It sounds like sorrow trying to smile. You stare at the tooth in your hand. It's cracked, blackened at the root. You imagine it rolling around your gums for weeks if you'd done nothing. Then you imagine not having Jack around. You'd be trying to pull it yourself with a dagger and a bottle of rum, sobbing between hiccups. Historians still argue whether pirates pulled their own teeth often, or only in desperate cases. Some accounts suggest ship surgeons handled it, others describe cabin boys doing it with sharpened spoons. Either way, anesthesia wasn't a thing. Screaming was. You wrap the tooth in cloth and tuck it into your bag. A souvenir, a warning. Later, someone tells you to drop it into the sea. If you keep it, the rot might follow you, they whisper. You pretend not to believe them, but that night you dream of teeth falling from your mouth one by one into an endless black ocean. By morning, the socket is swollen. You rinse with rum again, softer this time. Someone offers you a pinch of dried sage, says it'll help with infection. You chew it slowly, bitter and sharp, and hold it near the wound. You eat nothing that day. You sit on deck, watching the waves, feeling slightly lopsided without the tooth. Everyone loses something at sea. Teeth, fingers, sanity. Now you've lost a little too. There's an old man below deck with no teeth at all. He gums his food like a turtle, smiles at everyone like he's in on a secret. He tells you this. Pain's a toll. You pay it, you get stronger or weirder. Sometimes both. You smile, carefully. The next day, the swelling's down. You talk again, gently. Laugh, even. The hole in your mouth feels cavernous, like you've been scooped out. But you can think again. The ache is gone. It's replaced with something else, a quiet respect for what you just endured. That night, as you rinse again with the same firewater rum, you catch yourself doing something strange, smiling. It hurts, but not too much. The days blur together at sea. Hunger, heat, salt, sleep, and the occasional storm become your new calendar. But you mark time in pain now, in flares of jaw throbs, gum twinges, and how many bites of biscuit you can take before your face protests. You're healing, sort of. The hole where your tooth used to live is no longer weeping blood, just soreness now. A pulsing little reminder that even the ocean doesn't take without leaving a scar. But now that you're aware of the pain, you start to notice it in others. The guy next to you, who always eats slow, probably guarding a loose molar. The young one who chews everything on the right side of his mouth, obvious case of gum rot. The one who winces when he sneezes. Oh, that's an abscess, for sure. You begin to wonder how many on this ship are walking toothaches. One afternoon, a new recruit, barely more than a boy, is doubled over, pressing a dirty rag to his jaw. He hasn't eaten in 2 days. You've seen this look before. It's not seasickness. It's the slow crawl of infection, a tooth gone bad. You help him to the shade, offer him some stale grog, and tell him to rinse. He does. He cries. Quietly, like someone trying not to disturb the sea. You don't need to be a doctor to recognize what's coming. His breath smells like rotting meat. His face is puffed on one side. The gum is bulging outward, tight and shiny. It's not just bad, it's dangerous. This is the kind of thing that can kill a man. An untreated dental infection in the age of piracy wasn't just unpleasant, it was lethal. Once the infection spread to the bloodstream, it became what they called sepsis. And sepsis out here means death. Historians still argue how often pirates died from dental infections, since records are vague. But bones don't lie. Archaeologists have found skulls from shipwrecks with visible signs of decay, abscess holes, and jawbone erosion. It's one thing to read about it, it's another to see it in a living, whimpering body. You call for Big Jack again. He appears like a storm cloud, cracking his knuckles, but this time the boy refuses, shakes his head. He's too scared. So Jack shrugs, offers him some vinegar to swish, and walks away. He's not cruel, just realistic. You stay with the boy that night. He shivers. He mutters things. The fever's already setting in. His tooth, whatever's left of it, has become a hot coal buried in his skull. You know what that feels like. But this is worse. By dawn, he's gone. They wrap him in canvas and say a few words. Then they slide him into the sea. A soft splash, and then silence. No one looks at each other, no one says the word, but you all think it tooth. A single rotten tooth took him. That, and the lack of anything better than rum and rope to treat it. Afterward, there's a shift in the crew, a tension, a quiet fear. You notice more pirates rinsing with rum, more scraping with rope ends. One guy even tries to make a toothpick from the tip of a bird bone. There's a new urgency in their eyes, like they've suddenly realized how thin the line is between discomfort and death. It's not about vanity. No one here's angling for a pretty smile. This is about survival, pain management, staying useful, because a pirate who can't eat or fight is a pirate who gets left behind, or worse. Later that evening, you overhear a conversation between two veterans. One mentions that back in Port Royal, some brothels sold tiny glass vials of tooth elixir, a mix of clove oil, brandy and powdered pearl. Supposedly healed anything, probably a scam. But still, the dream of something working sticks in your mind. You ask around, hoping someone might have some left. One guy offers you a bottle of tooth oil that smells like moldy bark and turpentine. You decline politely. Then when he turns, you see he's missing half his lower jaw. You regret nothing. You return to your bunk that night, swish again with warm grog, and lie back in your hammock. It creaks. You let it swing. Your tongue absent-mindedly traces the gap in your teeth. There's an odd comfort in it now. You survived something, lost a piece of yourself, sure, but kept the rest. And out here, that's a win. It starts with a grin. Not yours, a crewmate's. He's got a tooth the color of brass, a bit crooked, and set right in front like a badge. You notice it when he laughs, really laughs, during some ridiculous card game with soaked, half-torn playing cards. The thing is, you notice it because it sparkles, not just the shine of gold, but the audacity of it. In a mouth full of rot and ruin, that one little gleaming tooth looks like a statement, and you can't help but wonder, why keep one perfect tooth? That's when you hear about it, the lucky tooth. Turns out some pirates didn't just pull rotten teeth. They replaced them, sort of, not with clean, sterile implants, mind you. This was no dental surgery. These were charms, talismans, bits of treasure jammed into sockets or tied around necks like proof of pain, endured and survived. You hear stories all day. One guy has a silver molar, supposedly hammered into his jaw with a drinking horn. Another keeps a small pouch on a cord, tucked beneath his shirt. Inside, 4 teeth, all his, pulled by choice. Says they spoke to him in a dream. He doesn't get invited to many conversations. Then there's Mad Henry. He's missing every tooth except one, a long, slightly curved canine capped in bone. No one asks where the bone came from. He claims it was a Spanish monk. You decide not to pursue that story. This pirate superstition isn't rare. On the contrary, many believed a single intact tooth brought luck in battle, or that the soul could escape through the mouth unless it was guarded by gold. It sounds ridiculous until you realize how desperate people become when everything is pain and blood and chance. Some pirates even believed that losing all your teeth meant your voice would fade, that you'd be forgotten by the sea. So they clung to one, polished it, named it even. Historians still debate whether this was actual belief or just post-trauma creativity, a way to make sense of the body's slow collapse. Either way, it's stuck. You start to pay attention now. You look at smiles differently, gaps, chips, the occasional glint of something unnatural. One man has what looks like a gemstone set into his upper molar. You ask if it's real. He shrugs and says, "It cost me a knife fight, so probably." Not everyone replaces their teeth with treasure, though. Some wrap string around the stumps and paint them with ash to keep spirits out. Others chew on coins, literally. You see a guy chewing a copper piece until it's black from saliva and friction. It's not sanitary, but neither is anything else on this ship. You talk to an older pirate who swears he once saw a captain who had dentures made from carved walrus ivory. He wore them only during raids to intimidate enemies. Looked like Neptune himself was biting down on your soul, he says, and you sort of believe him. Knocked out a rival's front tooth in a brawl, then wore it on a string like a hunter's trophy. Savage? Yes. But in this world, where everything you own could be swallowed by the sea tomorrow, tokens like that matter. Later that evening, you catch your reflection in a rusted piece of metal. You smile. It's weird now, lopsided, but the gap is part of you. And for the first time you wonder, should you keep that tooth after all? Make a charm, tie it to your belt, you dig it out of your pack. It's dried, a little cracked but intact. You roll it between your fingers. Maybe you'll bore a hole through it. Hang it around your neck. Not for magic, not for superstition. Just as a reminder of pain, of survival, of the part of yourself you left behind but didn't lose. The wind kicks up, the ship sways, a bell rings from above. You slide the tooth back into the cloth, and for a moment, as your fingers close around it, it really does feel like a little treasure. You've now been at sea long enough that you're done to flinch when something wet drops onto your head. Rain, seawater, bird droppings, you've learned to treat them all as gentle gifts. But what you still haven't gotten used to is yourself, the smell. It's in your clothes, your hammock, your hair, and worst of all, your skin. A kind of briny, oily film that no amount of rain or wiping can fully remove. You scratch your arm, and a thin layer of salt flakes off. That's not poetry, that's just Tuesday. Bathing, technically, exists on this ship, but it's more theory than practice. If you're lucky, you find a barrel half full of rainwater and use a rag to dab. If you're unlucky, you use seawater, which somehow makes everything feel worse, like scrubbing yourself with rejection and barnacles. You decide to try it anyway. You strip down, clutching a bucket, and lower it into the ocean. The water is cold, choppy, and smells like dead things. You haul it up, grit your teeth, and dump it over your head. It stings. Not because of the salt, though that doesn't help, but because you have cuts you didn't know you had. It's refreshing, briefly. Then your skin dries, sticky and tight. You feel clean for about 9 minutes. Then the sweat starts again. Pirates didn't bathe often, not because they didn't want to, but because it wasn't practical. Fresh water was more precious than gold, and seawater was both irritating and filled with microorganisms that modern science would lose its mind over. Historians still argue whether pirate ships had designated bath times or stations. Some say yes, others think it was more like you fell overboard, congrats, you bathed. Either way, regular hygiene was not the norm. There's an old superstition, too. Bathing at sea invites bad weather. The ocean doesn't like you rinsing off its essence. That's why, supposedly, some sailors refused to wash during calm stretches, didn't want to anger the waves. You're not sure you believe that, but as the clouds roll in overhead while you rinse your underarms with a damp sock, you start to wonder. One crewmate has a different approach. He rubs himself down with sand, scrubbing hard, then rinses with grog. His skin is red as a boiled lobster, but he insists it works. The sting means it's clean, he grunts, wincing as he wipes his inner thigh. Another guy carries a little pouch of herbs. He soaks them in water and uses the brew to wipe down his face. He smells vaguely of lavender. Everyone calls him Fancy. The captain? He doesn't bathe. He powders himself, full-on French court style. His face, neck, even the inside of his collar. Rumor has it, he once wore gloves soaked in rose water. He now smells like wet parchment and expired cologne. No one tells him. You look around and realize this ship is an ecosystem of competing odors. Some sharp, some dull, some sour enough to make your eyes water. It's not just the people, though, it's the ship itself. Rotting wood, mildew, old ropes, dead fish scales mashed into the planks. Even the sails have a scent, sun-baked linen soaked in brine and bird droppings. Everything reeks, and it changes you. Not just how you move, but how you see others. You don't judge anymore. You stop cringing when someone walks by with a stink so potent it feels like it has mass. You're part of it now, you're contributing. You do what you can. Wipe your face with a damp cloth. Change your shirt once a week. Scrub your nails with a broken seashell. It's not enough, but it's something. That night you sit on deck with your feet hanging off the side, swirling them in the sea. It feels nice, cooling. You glance around. No one's watching. So you go for it. You strip down, toss the rest of the seawater bucket over your head, and dunk yourself off the side, still holding the rope. The water shocks you awake. It's electric, pure sensory overload. You scrub your scalp with both hands, kick against the hull, and pray there aren't sharks nearby. When you haul yourself back aboard, shivering and breathing hard, you feel alive. Filthy, still but less ancient. Like maybe you peeled off one layer of decay. Your skin tingles, your jaw aches less. For a moment, under the stars, wind in your face, you feel clean. Of course, someone throws a fish head at you from above. You sigh, the moment's over. But you still smile, because now you know the secret. You can't beat the stink, but you can fight it. And on this ship, even a small victory like that feels like treasure. You wake up scratching. It starts with your scalp, then your forearm, then, unfortunately, your groin. You pause, blink at the ceiling beam above your hammock, and whisper to no one in particular, "Oh no." Lice. Not the kind that pass through your life unnoticed. The kind that set up shop and start a family reunion on your skin. You sit up fast, eyes wide, heart sinking, and glance around. Half the crew is scratching too. Some openly. One guy is using a fork. There's no shame in it, just exhaustion. Lice, fleas, mites. Pirates knew them all. They lived with them like you'd live with a leaky roof or a squeaky door. Annoying, yes, but part of the world. You tug at your shirt and find little red bumps along your ribs. You pull back your hair and, yep, movement. It's small, white, and quick. Congratulations. You're hosting a parasite party. You march to the rain barrel and dunk your head, scrubbing wildly with salt and a prayer. The salt stings, and it's probably not helping, but it feels proactive. You scrape at your scalp with a bit of driftwood. A guy walks by and offers a shrug. They only bite if you're sweet. Thanks, the worst part, you'll never get rid of them. Not completely. You can delay, slow them down, even knock them back. But out here, with no clean clothes and nowhere to boil water, the lice always win. Some pirates shave their heads, fully, even beards. You see one guy doing it right now with a dagger, gritting his teeth as he slices through greasy hair, letting tufts fall into the sea. You consider doing the same, but you're not quite ready to say goodbye to your eyebrows. Then come the boils. You notice one on your arm, a raised red lump, angry looking. You don't touch it. That would be worse. You've heard stories, boils that exploded mid-battle, soaking shirts in pus and sending crewmates running, boils that grew teeth. Okay, maybe that one was a joke. But still, you show it to Big Jack. He nods, says, "Don't poke it," then hands you a bit of cloth soaked in rum. You press it against your skin, hissing. There's another legend. A guy once lanced a boil with a splinter, only for it to get infected. His arm rotted black, and they chopped it off with a cleaver. He still won't eat soup. Says it reminds him of the smell. You don't want to end up in that story. Then, one night, you feel something wriggling in your beard. You bolt upright and slap your face, hands flying. It's not a lice bite. It's something in your beard. You grab a lantern, rush to the mirror shard tied to the mast, and lean in. There, tiny, moving, nestled near your chin, a maggot. You gag. Later you learn it's not uncommon, especially if a cut goes unnoticed, or if you sleep with your face pressed into filthy canvas. Flies lay eggs, eggs hatch. Next thing you know, your beard becomes a haunted forest. Historians still argue whether pirate ships were truly this grotesque, or whether stories were exaggerated by enemies and rival sailors. But given what you're seeing, feeling, living, it's not hard to believe. You shave part of your beard that night, just the lower half, A weird pirate goatee remains, mostly because the blade dulled halfway through and you got tired. You try different methods to keep things clean. You rub vinegar on your skin. Doesn't work. You try lemon juice. Makes it worse. One guy suggests burying your shirt in the sand overnight. Kills the bugs, he says. But there's no sand, just ocean. So you soak it in salt water and hope. The itch never fully leaves. It fades, then flares. Like a rude little reminder that comfort is a lie, and your skin belongs to bugs now. Still, there's a sort of bonding in the misery. You sit next to a guy as he calmly combs his chest hair with a fishbone. You nod. He nods. You don't speak, but you both understand. You swap stories of infestations, of strange bites and suspicious rashes. One man claims his lice once spelled out a message on his thigh. You laugh too hard and nearly cry. At night, you sleep less and scratch more. You develop rituals, pressing cloth to your neck, dusting your legs with ash, checking your pillow for movement. It helps a little, and in the dark, as the ship rocks and creaks, you whisper to yourself, "At least it's not the beard maggots again." The morning starts with a sharp scent in the air, not fish, not sweat, something unfamiliar. You follow your nose through the usual haze of brine and rot and find yourself staring at the last thing you expect on a pirate ship, a man in powdered gloves. He's standing near the captain's quarters, coat brushed, boots oddly clean, dabbing his neck with a small square of cloth that smells faintly of cloves and something floral. You blink. He looks like he got lost on the way to a royal court. His name? Gentleman Giles. He's been aboard for months, apparently, quiet, efficient, and, to the crew's mixed amusement and annoyance, obsessed with staying clean. You watch him gently powder under his armpits. You swear he hums while doing it. Now Giles isn't alone in his strange ways. There are others, pirates who, despite the grime and gore, maintain odd, meticulous habits. One swishes his mouth with hot vinegar every morning, holding it for exactly 60 seconds. Another rubs his skin with dried orange peel, claims it wards off sweat demons. You start paying closer attention. There's a skinny sailor who carries a pouch of dried lavender stolen from a merchant EC trunk. He boils it into tea, then uses the steeped cloth to wipe his face. Another guy hoards lemons, not to prevent scurvy, but to squeeze on his hands for the shine. It's not all about smelling good. There's strategy here. You begin to notice that the cleaner pirates are treated differently. Not necessarily better, but with a kind of wary respect. Like they're slightly apart from the rest, half in this world, half in some distant, perfumed one. You try talking to Giles later. Ask him why he bothers. His answer is surprisingly soft. "I used to stink," he says, "so badly the rats wouldn't come near me. Then one day I found a bar of soap floating in a wreck. Lavender changed my life." You can't tell if he's joking. Historians still debate how much effort pirates actually put into personal care. There are journals suggesting some captains enforced grooming standards, not for health, but for morale. Clean shirts on Sunday, fresh water when available. Some ships even banned spitting indoors. Others, of course, were floating disasters. But Giles, he's a believer, and somehow he's surviving. You try his method. Just once, you sneak a rag into a pot of warm water, add a pinch of herbs you found tucked in a supply crate, and wipe your face and neck. The difference isn't dramatic. You're still greasy, still sunburned, still itchy. But for a few minutes you feel awake. Less like a piece of driftwood, more like a person. Then someone dumps fish guts on the deck next to you, and the moment passes. Even the captain, you notice, maintains a kind of twisted elegance. His coat is never truly clean, but always brushed. His boots are polished with animal fat. He trims his mustache with care. It's theatrical, yes, but it works. He commands attention. Even his smell, something like tobacco, leather, and burnt sugar, is strangely iconic. You start to think maybe there's more to all this than vanity. Cleanliness on a pirate ship isn't about pride. It's about control over your body, over your space, over something in a world where everything is damp, dirty, and trying to kill you. So you adjust. You start small, wiping your hands before meals, rinsing your mouth with diluted grog instead of just swishing salt water. You rub your fingernails with sand when you can find any. You wash your hammock. Once. It's not glamorous. It doesn't stop the lice or the toothaches, but you feel a little less hollow. That night, Giles offers you a single glove. You take it. Powdered. Smells like old books and citrus. You don't wear it, but you keep it close. A reminder that some things, even out here, can still feel soft. You're leaning on the rail one dusk, watching the sky turn from burnt orange to bruised purple, when you notice two pirates arguing below deck. Loudly, passionately, and strangely, romantically. You inch closer, not because you're nosy, obviously, but because the word kiss floats upward on the breeze like a cannonball with wings. Turns out, even among salt-crusted decks and crab-infested stew, pirates still fall in love, or at least stumble into something that feels like it. And yes, despite the breath that could melt barnacles and teeth arranged like broken piano keys, they kiss. You can't help but wonder, how? You think about your own mouth, the gap where your tooth used to be, your breath that currently smells like pickled rope and despair. Then you think about her, the girl back in Tortuga, with eyes like storm clouds and a laugh that rattled your bones. Would she even recognize you now? The truth is, Hygiene didn't cancel desire. If anything, it sharpened it. On a pirate ship, where death looms daily, affection became currency. And yes, sometimes that affection involved leaning in, real close, and hoping the other person wasn't actively decomposing. You ask around. One guy swears he seduced 3 barmaids with nothing but a smile. You point out he's missing most of his front teeth. He says exactly, less blocking the view. You choose not to unpack that. Another admits he carries cloves in his pocket, not for pain, but to chew before trying his luck in port. Ladies like a man who tastes exotic, he says, winking with an eye that may or may not be infected. Historians still argue how common romance was among pirates. Some claim ships had strict no women aboard rules. Others insist relationships, of all kinds, flourished in cramped quarters. The truth probably lies somewhere in between, wrapped in sweaty secrecy and whispered promises made under moonlight. You hear about tooth charms, trinkets pirates would give lovers, a pulled molar wrapped in cloth, a gold cap turned into a pendant. One tale describes a pirate who carved a heart into his own ivory replacement tooth and gave it to a tavern girl. She wore it until her dying day. You try not to picture the logistics of that gesture too vividly. One crewmate tells you love is easier when everyone smells equally bad. No one's got the upper hand, he says, laughing as he rubs whale grease into his boots. It's not about perfume, it's about timing. Still, some tried harder than others. The man with the scented gloves, turns out he keeps them for encounters ashore. Women remember the smell, he says, even if they forget the name. You ask if his teeth are real. He grins. Half of them. The rest are carved walnut. You don't know if he's lying, but if he is, it's a lovely lie. And then there are the love letters. Yes, pirates wrote them, sometimes from port to port, sometimes just folded into logs or left behind after battles. To the girl in Havana, one began, if I don't return, it's because the sea stole my breath. You find one under your bunk, unsent, scribbled in shaky handwriting on parchment. No name, just, I wish you'd seen me before the sea got me, before the rot. You don't know who wrote it, maybe the boy who died, maybe someone still aboard. You tuck it into your pack, because even among rotting gums and cracked molars, there is still longing. That night you dream of a kiss, not from the girl in Tortuga, but someone faceless, warm, kind, who doesn't flinch at the gap in your smile. And when you wake, you rinse your mouth with grog, not for hygiene, not for health, just in case. You're below deck, Half asleep, when someone whispers a joke that echoes through the dark like a ghost, careful smiling too wide, your teeth might jump ship. It gets a few tired chuckles, one cough, but it sticks with you. Because you've started to notice a strange thing. Not everyone on this ship is toothless. Not even close. The image you had in your head before you ever set foot on board, that every pirate looks like a human jack-o'-lantern. Not quite right. There's still a lot of bad teeth, sure. Plenty of gaps, brown stains, odd angles and desperate replacements. But it's not the full skeletal grin of cartoon legends, and that gets you thinking, where did this image come from? Turns out the toothless pirate isn't entirely rooted in reality. It's built on fragments, part fact, part fiction, and part good old-fashioned exaggeration. The kind that starts in a dockside tavern and ends up etched into a movie poster. You bring it up with an old sailor over a pot of stew that tastes suspiciously like yesterday's stew. He nods slowly, eyes squinting. They want us ugly in the stories, he says, easier to hate or laugh at. He's not wrong. In the centuries since pirates ruled the seas, storytellers, painters, playwrights, authors have taken creative liberties. Toothlessness became shorthand for danger, decay, or comic relief. No teeth must be a villain or a fool or both. But back then, in the real muck and splinters of it all, teeth told a different story. A pirate with intact teeth was someone who ate, who survived, who maybe even smiled without shame. Historians still argue about the average dental health of seafarers in the golden age of piracy. Some skeletal remains show severe decay and loss. Others show surprising resilience, especially among those who came from hard, sugarless beginnings. Refined sugar, it turns out, wasn't as common among pirates as later myths suggest. Most sugar was expensive and shipped out, not downed by every crew member with each meal. So while they faced rot from malnutrition, hardtack and grog, they weren't exactly munching caramels every night. You find yourself staring more often, at smiles, at sneers, at gold caps and black gaps and everything in between. You start cataloguing them in your head, two left crooked, upper half shiny, mouth like a cave-in. And slowly you realize that teeth became personality, style, a badge of suffering maybe, but also a kind of pirate identity. You remember Grinner, the man with the permanent jaw-lock sneer. Everyone assumes he's always amused. No one knows he hasn't been able to chew in years. And Lucky Remy. His toothy smile isn't it because he is happy. It is because it is the only expression his ruined gums allow. Some pirates leaned into it, fashioned their rot into legend. The ones with missing teeth were said to bite harder. The ones with blackened smiles. Cursed, they said, touched by the ocean. But others, they hid it, refused to smile, spoke with closed lips, ate alone. Pride, even here, still finds a place to curl up. And then there were the clever ones. Pirates who had their front teeth pulled intentionally so they could whistle louder through storms. True? Maybe, maybe not. But if you believe it, doesn't that make it real enough? You pass a mirror shard later and catch your reflection. The missing tooth, now familiar, makes your smile look uneven but lived in. Like the ship itself, weathered, battered, but still afloat. You think of home, of portraits and paintings showing pirates as monsters. No teeth, no soul, just grins like tombstones. You now know that's nonsense. There were mouths full of song, full of shouts, full of laughter, cursing, pleading, storytelling, kissing, sobbing, teeth or no teeth. And your mouth, cracked as it is, has joined the choir. The rain comes in sideways. You're standing on the quarterdeck, trying to stay upright as the ship bucks under your feet, when a younger crewmate stumbles by. Face painted white with salt, mouth wide open in a scream you can't hear over the storm. And for a moment he looks exactly like one of those movie pirates, eyes wild, missing teeth, soaked to the bone. A walking stereotype. You almost laugh. Because now you know. You know that what people think pirates looked like and what they really were rarely line up. The toothless, stinking cartoon pirate isn't real. Or at least not entirely. That version of history, the rum-guzzling, gold-toothed scoundrel with half a jaw and zero dental plan, is mostly a creation of stories told long after the gunsmoke faded. And guess who's to blame? Hollywood. Ever since Pirates became box office gold, filmmakers have leaned into a very specific look. Missing teeth, exaggerated accents, scruffy beards, maybe an eye twitch for drama. The pirate with one gold tooth and 12 cavities has become the standard. He slurs, he stinks, he cackles like a haunted bird. It's great fun. It's also, well, a bit of a lie. Historians still debate how much the golden age of piracy actually resembled what we see in films. But one thing's clear, popular culture loves its myths. And when it comes to pirates, the myth stuck harder than tar on a hull. Why? Because it's entertaining. It makes the pirate a joke, a villain, a Halloween costume. And that image, peg legs, parrot on the shoulder, breath like death, is easy to sell. You've started noticing it everywhere, in books, in games, even in that old sea shanty the crew sings, where every verse adds another rotten tooth to the chorus. And yet, you get it. The real thing is messier, more painful, less cinematic. Because the truth is, pirates didn't look like monsters. They looked like people. Dirty, sunburned, damaged, but human. They didn't all stink. They didn't all lose every tooth, and they definitely didn't all talk like someone doing a bad impression of a drunken sailor. You start to think about what these myths actually do. They flatten pirates, strip away the complexity, make you forget the young sailor who cried when his tooth was pulled, the man who carved a wooden replacement in silence, the one who died from a jaw infection because no one could help in time. These weren't caricatures. They were survivors. You remember Giles with his powdered gloves, Grinner with his clenched sneer, the man who replaced his molar with a shark tooth and swore it helped him bite through rope. They're more interesting than anything a costume shop could dream up. Still, some of the myths aren't entirely wrong. Gold teeth? Yeah, that happened, mostly for showing off. Rum for dental pain? Absolutely. Filthy hammocks and lice-infested hair? Every day. But the cartoon pirate smile, that gaping, toothless grin, used to make children giggle and villains seem ridiculous. That's not the whole truth. In fact, some pirates took pride in their teeth, brushed them with sticks, rinsed with grog, bit down on musket balls and survived to spit them back. Teeth were power, identity, tools, even trophies. And when they lost them, they remembered. Some would carve teeth from bone and wear them like necklaces. Others kept their pulled molars in pouches as luck charms. Some even filed what remained into sharp points, not for chewing, but for intimidation. You wipe rain from your eyes and peer down at your own reflection in a puddle forming on the deck. The gap where your molar used to be is still there, but you don't flinch now. It's you. You don't look like a cartoon. You don't look like a villain. You look like someone who's lived through something. And that, more than any Hollywood grin, feels honest. The storm passes. The ship calms. The clouds start to break apart like old parchment, revealing a patch of stars overhead. You lean back against the rail and think about how stories are shaped. Not just by what happened, but by who tells them. Maybe someday, someone will tell your story, and maybe they'll get it right. The sea is quiet tonight. Not just calm, but quiet. The kind of stillness that makes every creak of the ship sound like a conversation. You sit alone on the deck, legs crossed, wrapped in a damp blanket that smells vaguely like mildew and cloves. Above you, the stars flicker, tired little candles held in place by nothing but tradition. You run your tongue over your gums. It's strange. After all this time, the absence of that one tooth feels normal now. Your mouth has adjusted. You chew differently, speak differently, smile differently, but it's still you. And in a way, it's not just about the tooth anymore. It's about what you've learned out here, about pirate life, real pirate life beyond the rum jokes and treasure maps. Because after weeks at sea, you now understand what hygiene really meant on these ships. It wasn't luxury, it wasn't vanity, it was survival. A scraped tongue with a bit of rope, a rinse with ash, a prayer over a cracked molar. These were desperate acts in a desperate world, and yet even amid the filth and the pain, you saw beauty. You saw a man polish a tooth like it was gold. You saw someone else pull their own with nothing but will and wire. You saw laughter, real laughter, come from mouths full of chaos and ruin. Because sometimes the worse things got, the harder pirates held on to joy. Historians still debate whether pirates truly cared about hygiene at all. And sure, some didn't. Some let the sea consume them inch by inch. But others fought. With vinegar and rope, with prayers and powdered gloves, with cloves in their mouths and coins on their belts. And now, you're one of them. A survivor. Your teeth are not perfect. Your breath still smells like rum and rebellion. Your gums still protest when you chew too fast, but your mouth is yours, and you've earned every gap and every stain. You rise slowly, stretching muscles that ache in familiar ways. You step barefoot across the deck, each board cool and slick beneath you, and lean into the night breeze. Somewhere below, someone is singing softly. A tune you don't recognize, but one that sounds old, older than the ship, older than the sea, maybe even older than the myths. You think back on everything, the first sting of rot, the blood, the screams, the superstition, the quiet kisses under decks, the lies told by Hollywood and the truths whispered by old sailors, and you smile, a real smile, lopsided, tooth gap gleaming, but real. Because on this ship, your smile is not a joke, it's a story, a record, a weapon, a memory. And the myth of the toothless pirate, it's just that, a myth. Now you know better. Wind down, final 300 words. The ship rocks gently now, not in anger, but in rhythm. A lullaby for the world's most chaotic floating village. The sails ripple with soft sighs of wind. The ropes creak like old bones stretching after a long sleep. You sit down again, this time cross-legged near the bow, where you can see the horizon. It's hard to tell where the sea ends and the sky begins. The stars above are mirrored in the black water below, and for just a moment, you feel like you're floating between them. You slow your breath, in and out. The salt air fills your lungs, not harsh now, but cool and comforting. A familiar friend. The sting in your gums has faded. The itch on your scalp is calm. The noise of the ship fades into soft murmurs, the occasional flap of sailcloth, a sigh from someone sleeping nearby, the quiet clink of metal against wood. You imagine yourself far from here, curled in a clean bed, the sea a memory, your jaw whole again. But then you realize this is enough, this moment right now, with all its grime and broken teeth and strange, beautiful people. You survived, you lived, you learned, and as you close your eyes, you let it all drift away. The myths, the pain, the stories. You let sleep take you, like the tide pulling back to shore. And somewhere deep in your dreams, someone grins, not perfectly, but honestly. You crawl out of bed, careful not to disturb your family, though that's tough, considering you all sleep in the same room. Your younger brother snores like a blacksmith's bellows. Your mother is already murmuring her prayers, and your father's nowhere to be seen, probably outside checking on the livestock or relieving himself behind the compost pile. No indoor plumbing, remember? Your home is a single-room cottage, walls made of wattle and daub, basically mud and sticks, and the roofs thatched with reeds, which house a family of mice you've begrudgingly named. There's no glass in the windows, just shutters. On windy nights, they rattle like skeletons playing dice, and in winter, you plug the gaps with rags or whatever you can find. There's no clock. Time is told by the sky or the local bells, if your village is fancy enough to have them. Mostly, you go by sun, crows, and the sound of old Marta next door banging her pan to wake her 3 grandchildren. Everything you own is within reach. The table, if you can call it that, is a rough plank on barrels. There's one bench, maybe 2 wooden spoons. A ceramic jug for water if you're lucky. The walls are stained with soot. The only decoration is a crude wooden cross and maybe a tiny carved charm to ward off evil. Doesn't it seem to be working? Last week your cousin coughed up blood and the pig gave birth to a stillborn with 2 heads. As you shuffle toward the door, stepping over your sleeping dog, more rat catcher than pet, you feel the chill. There's no insulation, no chimney. The smoke from last night's fire still lingers, coating your lungs. And your tunic? It's stiff. You think it's damp. You're not sure. Either way, it smells like boiled feet. Outside, the world is quiet. Mist hangs low over the fields, clinging to the grass like it knows what's coming. A rooster crows, a cow moans, a cart creaks in the distance. And just like that, your day begins. Historians still argue whether the average medieval peasant was truly miserable or just knew no better. But as your bare feet hit the frosty ground, you don't feel philosophical. You feel cold. You feel hungry. And above all, you feel the weight of repetition. Because today will be like yesterday, and tomorrow will be like today, unless you die. Which, statistically, you might. One quirky detail: some peasants would hang herbs over their doors to keep evil spirits away. You tried that last year, but it just attracted goats. You don't even own goats. And yes, there's a reason people didn't live long. It wasn't just the plagues and wars. It was this: the damp, the cold, the infections that began with a splinter and ended with feverish hallucinations and a hasty burial in unconsecrated ground because the priest was away drinking mead with the reeve. You scratch your leg. Fleas again, or lice, or both, you're not sure, and there's no mirror, which is probably for the best. And before you even think of breakfast, there's work, the kind that ruins backs, stiffens fingers, and earns you, well, nothing. The land isn't yours. It's Lord Bartholomew's, or maybe the monastery's. You just exist here like moss on a rock, replaceable, forgettable, and yet somehow you carry on. Because there's bread to be baked, water to be fetched, animals to be fed, and 1,000 chores waiting before the sun even properly rises. Welcome to peasant life. Your stomach growls like a wounded wolf, and that's how you know it's time for breakfast. You stumble to the hearth where the ashes of last night's fire still radiate a bit of heat, just enough to warm your fingers before you start the long ritual of scraping together a meal that barely qualifies as one. You lift the lid off the clay pot nestled among the coals. The smell is, well, familiar. Burnt, sour, vaguely yeasty. That's the porridge from yesterday, mostly barley and water, with a suspiciously chewy lump that might have once been a turnip. You stir it, add a splash of stale ale to soften it, and scoop out portions for everyone still waking up. Breakfast is communal, quiet and uninspiring. No forks, no sugar, no coffee, just a rough wooden spoon and the feeling that your molars are fighting a losing battle against yet another chunk of gritty, stone-laced bread. Why stone-laced? Because the grain for your bread is ground at the manners mill, and that millstone's been cracking and chipping for years. Each loaf comes with a sprinkling of gravel, like a medieval surprise inside a sad Kinder egg. You don't eat bread so much as wrestle with it. One bite and your tooth twinges. That's the one that's been bothering you since Candlemas. You've been ignoring it, of course, because what else can you do? There's no dentist, no pain relief. Maybe the village herbalist will offer some boiled willow bark and a vague incantation. But mostly, your solution is to chew on the other side and hope the tooth just dies quietly. Historians still debate how much protein the average peasant actually consumed. Some records suggest you had access to eggs, cheese, maybe even bacon on rare occasions. Others argue that was more fantasy than reality, reserved for festivals or after a particularly generous hunt, assuming the Lord allowed it. Most days, you survive on bread, beans, pottage, and beer so weak it's safer than the water. That beer? It's warm, flat, and cloudy, but it won't give you dysentery. So you drink it. Even the kids drink it. And nobody raises an eyebrow because everyone knows what happened to Marta S. Boy when he drank from the creek last spring. As you chew, slowly, your mind drifts to the sweet myth of noble simplicity. That pastoral image of the humble peasant breaking fast with his family, warmed by love and honest labor. Yet no, your reality is more like moldy bread, cold feet, and the knowledge that you're already late for the fields. Still, there's a strange rhythm to it. Your hands move automatically. Dip the bread, pass the pot, take turns. No one talks much. There's nothing new to say. Your sister sighs. Your mother hums a hymn under her breath. Your youngest brother drops his spoon into the porridge and blinks like a confused owl. You stand and stretch, and every joint protests. You're 16, but your knees feel 70. You grab your cloak, scratchy, patched with mismatched wool, and smells faintly of wet goat, and head outside. The sun's just cresting the hills now, painting the frost-covered fields with a pale gold glow. Pretty, if your toes weren't numb. A rooster struts by like he owns the place. He probably does. On the way to your plot of land, well, your rented strip of Lord Bartholomew's land, you pass the miller's cottage. You see smoke rising from his chimney. Lucky man. He gets to keep a portion of everyone's grain as payment. He's got meat hanging from a rack outside, real sausages. You pause for a second just to stare, then you move on, because you can't afford to dream too long. The field awaits. And honestly, it's not just the work that's heavy. It's the knowing. Knowing that this same breakfast, this same aching back, this same cracked mug of ale, this is your tomorrow too. And your next year, unless the harvest fails, unless you get conscripted, unless you die from a splinter or a bad cough. Otherwise, it's this, forever. Still you take another bite of that coarse, splintery bread, now slathered with a scrap of pig fat your uncle smuggled home from a butchering. You savor it like it's roast duck. One fringe detail here, some medieval folk believed leaving your bread crusts uneaten would attract demons. So you chew the whole thing, even the rock-hard end that could double as a blunt weapon. You pass old Tom, limping his way to the barn. He nods, doesn't say a word. His left eye is cloudy, and he hasn't spoken properly since that weird fever last summer. You nod back. That's the village version of small talk, and just like that, breakfast is over. Not because you're full, but because there's nothing left. You wipe your hands on your tunic, take a swig of your murky beer and trudge on, because there's a plough waiting, and mud, and bruises, and very, very little daylight. But at least your belly has something in it now, even if it's mostly pebbles and bitter thoughts. You reach the edge of the field, just as the mist begins to lift, revealing rows of churned-up earth, waiting for your back to break under their weight. The air is thick with damp soil and old manure. Your boots, already worn thin, squelch in the muck. You sigh. The ploughshare looms ahead, its handle splintered, its blade chipped. It's going to be a long day. The oxen snort and shift impatiently. They're as sick of this routine as you are. One of them, the grumpy one with the bad leg, eyes you like he's seriously considering retirement, preferably involving falling over on you mid-furrow. You can't blame him. He works dawn to dusk, just like you, and he doesn't even get stale beer or bread pebbles. You grab the plough, brace your feet, and heave. The blade lurches forward, slicing through the mud with a grating groan. The soil's too wet today. It clings to everything. Your boots, the oxen's hooves, your soul. Each step requires effort. Each row you carve into the earth feels like a small war. You slip, curse under your breath. Nobody hears, just the wind, maybe the crows. Historians still argue whether medieval peasant labor was truly unrelenting or if folklore and exaggeration have made it seem worse than it was. But here exists the thing. When your only way to survive is to produce enough food to feed not just your family, but your lord, your priest, your taxes, and maybe a few passing bandits, you work. You work until your knuckles split and your spine starts whispering threats. The hours drag. You pause to stretch. Your back sings with sharp little jolts of pain, like someone's plucking your nerves with rusty tweezers. You rub your hands, cracked and calloused, against your thighs. That helps, barely. One quirky fact: some medieval ploughmen tied small charms or bones to their belts to ward off injury. You've got a lucky stone tied to yours. It doesn't do much. But then, what does? You lean into the plough again. The ox grunts. You mutter encouragement, though it sounds more like pleading. A few fields away, you spot a group of women bending low to gather rushes. You hear the rhythmic thump of a flail from the granary. Somewhere, someone singing off-key about St. Bridget's blessings. The village moves in tired harmony. Everyone works, no exceptions. Even the kids are out gathering firewood or scaring off birds from the barley. Time bleeds together. By midday, your tunic is soaked in sweat. Your arms tremble. The ache has settled in your shoulders, a familiar dull throb, like a bad secret you have to carry all day. You stop for lunch, a word that oversells the moment. You chew yesterday's bread. You sip lukewarm beer. You pick at a wedge of questionable cheese and try not to think about the mold. You stare at the ground, already dreading the rows you still need to turn. You watch ants crawl over your boot. You envy their purpose. You think, briefly, of quitting, of walking away from this field, this life. But where would you go? You're bound by obligation. The land isn't yours. The oxen aren't yours. Even your time isn't yours. The feudal contract is simple. The lord owns the land and you work it. In return, you get, well, the right to keep breathing. And maybe a few strips of cabbage in the winter. And if you don't work, if you're injured or too sick to plow or just too tired, no one steps in. There's no safety net, no workers' guild for peasants, no savings, no mercy. You finish your meal, wipe your hands on your tunic and get back to it. You plow and you sweat and you think about how your grandfather did this until he died in the field, face down in the furrow, eyes full of dirt. No funeral, just a quick blessing and a grave between the turnips and the blackberry bush. You wonder if that's how you'll go, or if you'll get lucky and catch something quick and violent, like the fever that took your cousin. But mostly, you don't think. You just work, because that's the only thing you're allowed to do. Toward evening, your muscles are jelly. Your hands sting. The plough is stuck again, and it takes 3 villagers and a very irritated ox to yank it free. The sky burns orange. The fields shimmer with mist again. You walk back home, dragging your feet one step at a time. Your knees threaten to buckle. Your shoulders feel disconnected from your spine. You're covered in filth. And somehow, still, you'll have to do this all over again tomorrow. You think about collapsing into your straw bed. But first, there's water to haul, animals to feed, and dinner to not look forward to. Because in the medieval world, work isn't just what you do, it's who you are. You're halfway back to your cottage when you spot him, Sir Bartholomew your lord, trotting down the path on a well-fed horse with a silver bit and a saddle that probably costs more than your entire village earns in a year. His cloak ripples behind him like he's gliding through a tapestry. He doesn't nod. He doesn't look down. You step off the path, lower your head, and wait for the clatter of hooves to pass. Because everything here, every fence, tree, shovel, cow, hut, and footpath, belongs to him. Except the sky. And even that, some days, feels rented. Feudalism isn't a system you chose. It's a net you were born into, and it catches everyone. The king grants land to his loyal nobles. Those nobles grant it to knights like Sir Bartholomew, and Sir Bartholomew in turn lets you work a scrap of that land in exchange for your labor, loyalty, and seasonal offerings. What a deal. Historians still argue how much autonomy medieval peasants truly had. Some manors allowed self-governance, minor councils, or negotiated rents. Others were stricter than a monastery during Lent. Yours? Let's just say if you so much as sneeze too loud near the manor wall, someone in chainmail shows up to explain why that was disrespectful to the grain spirits. Tonight, like every few weeks, it's due time. The tithe. 1/10 of your grain, eggs, or produce goes to the church. Another chunk goes to Sir Bartholomew. And don't forget the seasonal corvée, the mandatory days where you drop everything to fix the Lord Des barn, dig ditches or chase foxes from his vineyards. You don't get paid, you don't get thanked, you get blisters, and maybe, if he's feeling generous, a half-hearted blessing from his steward. You pass the tithe barn, a hulking wooden structure near the church, with carved reliefs of saints and strange beasts meant to remind you of your spiritual duty. Inside, rows of baskets overflow with wheat, beans, salted meat. You drop off your own contribution, a bag of barley that took you 2 weeks to gather, and walk away lighter in all the wrong ways. A quirky custom in some parts. Peasants would try to outsmart the system by hiding their best produce and offering smaller or slightly spoiled goods as tithe. But if caught, the punishment could be public shaming or a fine, or worse, a mysterious visit from the bailiff's men late at night. You've seen it happen. Old Ellsworth tried it with her hens. Next morning she had none left. No one talks about it. The hens didn't squeal, but someone else did. And taxes, let's not even start. Marriage tax, mill tax, oven tax, ale tax, fence tax. If you blink too loud, someone charges you a noise fee. You'd think with all this money, the roads would be paved and the village would have a real well. Nope, just more feasts at the manor house, a new drapery for the chapel. You reach your cottage, where your mother is kneading dough that smells vaguely edible, and your brother is picking lice off his tunic like it's a hobby. Your father is sharpening a sickle with a rock, eyes distant. He hasn't said much since the reeve accused him of hiding a lamb last fall. You know he didn't, but truth bends under power here. You sit on the bench outside, stare at the sunset, and think, if the Lord owns everything, what's left for you? The answer, your body. For now. Because that's all that really belongs to you, and even that's conditional. Break a leg, catch the pox, fall behind on your work, and suddenly your rights are more flexible than a reed in the wind. Still, you keep going. You walk the line, you bow low, you hand over the best of what you have, and in return, you get to stay alive, in a hut, on land that isn't yours, working a field that someone else profits from, while wearing clothes you probably inherited from a dead cousin, and dreaming, if you dare, of maybe one day saving enough to own a goat. You don't complain aloud, that would be dangerous. But sometimes, as you chew on a bitter herb and stare at the manor house glowing on the hilltop, you think, it must be nice to sleep in linen and drink wine that doesn't double as vinegar. But then your little sister runs past you, barefoot and giggling, a stick in her hand and her hair flying like a wheat stalk in the wind. And you remember, this isn't about fairness, it's about survival, and tomorrow the ox waits again. You wake up the next morning with a toothache that feels like someone hammering a hot nail into your skull. The left side of your face is swollen, your breath smells like you've been gargling with spoiled mead, and chewing anything harder than boiled oats is no longer an option. You know what this means. It's time to visit Agnes the herbalist. Agnes lives on the edge of the woods, in a cottage that smells like dried sage, damp bark, and faintly of regret. She's somewhere between 70 and eternal. Her hair is white, braided tight like rope, and her eyes are sharper than any knife in the village. Some call her wise, others whisper the word witch when she walks by. You just hope she knows how to kill pain. You trudge to her hut, head pounding, cheeks puffed out like a bellows, one hand pressed to your jaw. Agnes takes one look at you and tuts. She doesn't ask questions, just gestures for you to sit on a low stool made from a tree stump and starts rummaging through bundles of herbs, powders and bottles, with things floating in them that definitely had legs once. Historians still debate how effective medieval folk medicine truly was. Some argue that remedies based on willow bark, honey and herbal poultices had genuine healing properties. Others point out that the line between medicine and superstition was often thinner than your soup. Agnes leans in with a bundle of mashed onion, crushed garlic, a splash of vinegar, and something sticky that smells suspiciously like fermented apples. She packs the mixture into a scrap of linen and presses it hard against your jaw. You scream, or try to, but the sound comes out like a muffled goat bleat. She nods, satisfied. That'll draw out the evil humours, she mutters. And maybe the worm. Ah, yes, the worm. In medieval folk belief, many thought that toothaches were caused by actual tooth worms burrowing into the enamel and nibbling your nerves. No one had seen them, of course, but the pain sure felt like something was chewing its way through your skull. Some healers even claimed to pull worms out by burning incense near the mouth and showing the patient charred threads afterward. Theatre, basically. You sit there, drooling into your sleeve, while Agnes chants something under her breath. It might be a prayer. It might be a recipe. You're in no shape to ask. She sends you off with a small pouch of dried yarrow, instructions to gargle with salt water, and a warning not to eat anything blessed by the moon. You nod politely. You have no idea what that means. Back home, the pain has dulled slightly. Or maybe you're just too tired to notice anymore. You lie down on the bench beside the hearth, eyes half-lidded, cheek throbbing to the beat of your pulse. And you realize this is it. This is medieval healthcare. A handful of herbs, a whispered charm, and a hope that your body fights off whatever's brewing inside. You think of Father Gregory, the village priest, who once declared that suffering was a gift, that it purifies the soul and brings you closer to God. It's easier for him to say. He lives in a stone house, wears linen robes, and eats imported almonds during Lent. But you've got an infected molar and a bottle of sheep urine that Agnes claims cures fever and fright dreams. One quirky remedy from the era: people would sometimes rub crushed emeralds onto infected gums, believing the gems held divine healing energy. Of course, only the wealthy had emeralds. The poor settled for onion juice, stale beer, or sometimes a hot poker. No joke. Your neighbor tried that once. Let's just say he smiles a lot less these days. You sit up, squinting at the firelight, and sip a thin broth your mother made from leeks and yesterday's bones. It's warm, at least. You let it slosh gently over the aching tooth, hoping the salt does something. And here is the cruelest part. This doesn't even count as being sick. If you can walk, if you can bend, if you can lift a bucket, you're expected to work. There's no sick leave, no sympathy. Just raised eyebrows and reminders that Father Gregory is happy to bury you, but not before you finish digging the ditch behind the chapel. You lie back, staring at the rafters. A spider dangles overhead, spinning its little web like it has all the time in the world. Maybe it does. You, on the other hand, have to be in the field by dawn, swollen face or not, because the plough doesn't wait. The Lord doesn't wait, and winter's coming. You're back in the fields by morning, tooth still throbbing but dulled now to a pulsing background noise. The world is soaked. Last night's rain has turned everything into a sucking, sticky mess. Each step pulls at your boots like the mud is trying to keep you, which honestly wouldn't be the worst thing. A day spent lying face down in the muck sounds mildly more appealing than hauling manure uphill in a wooden cart with one wheel slightly cursed. The rain hasn't stopped, not really. Just shifted into mist. It beads on your tunic, soaks into your sleeves, and drips coldly down the back of your neck. Every surface is slippery. The cart axle groans like it wants to die. You agree with it. Your job today? Collect muck from the latrine trench and spread it across the barley rows. It's called manuring. You call it what it is. You shovel, one rotten clump at a time. You gag more than once. Your hands are raw, and the splinters from yesterday are now layered with a mix of rainwater, soil, and things better left unnamed. The smell clings to you, burrows into your pores. It follows you like a curse. Historians still debate how aware medieval peasants were of sanitation risks. Some argue they understood the basics. Don't drink from where the pigs wade, clean wounds with wine if you've got it. Avoid the moss that smells weird. Others say hygiene was mostly trial and error, heavy on the error. In your village, there's one communal pit toilet, lined with straw and cursed by every man, woman, and child who has to use it. If you're lucky, there's a rope to hold on to while you squat. If you're not, well, let's just say poor Ned lost a boot and half his pride down there last spring. The rain turns heavier, the roof of your cottage leaks in 4 places. You know this because you counted them last night, lying awake, watching the drips hit your face like nature's own alarm clock. One of the patches you made with waxed cloth didn't hold. You've been saving up a few coins to maybe trade for a bit of tanned leather to plug the biggest hole, but now that the Lord has raised the grain tax again, that dream's about as solid as your ceiling. You think back to summer, when everything felt easier. You worked longer hours, sure, but at least the sun warmed your skin instead of peeling it off with icy rain. Now, even your bones feel waterlogged. Your knees ache like they're rotting from the inside out. One quirky peasant belief: hanging garlic near the windows would ward off mold spirits and keep your cottage dry. You tried it once. It just made the rats hungrier. Speaking of rats. You finish your muck hauling, stomp the mud off your boots, pointless, and head back toward the grain shed. Inside, the shadows move. Not people, rats. Big ones, brazen. You clap your hands and they scatter, but only a few feet away. You'll see them again tonight, probably curled up near your bed like tiny furry landlords demanding rent. You sweep the floor with a bundle of reeds tied with twine. The grains are moldy, some have worms, but you bag what you can. Winter's not a time for standards. At home, your sister is coughing again, a deep, rattling sound that comes from somewhere low in her chest. Your mother's worried. She's heating a mixture of honey, boiled mint, and hope. There's no doctor. The nearest apothecary is 2 villages over, and he only travels here when someone pays him in chickens. You sit on a stool, dripping wet, and watch your father patch his boot with a sliver of bark and some twine. The room smells of damp wool and old onions. And through the window, you see the rats again. They don't even hide anymore. Your bed is wet. Again. The straw has gone sour, the kind of sour that makes you turn your face to the wall and pretend it's not happening. You lay down anyway. There's no dry spot. Historians still argue whether the average peasant was truly miserable or just better at enduring discomfort than modern folk. But you've endured, and you can safely say yes, it sucks. It really, really sucks. And tomorrow? It'll rain again. And the roof will still leak, and the rats will still visit, and you'll still be here, digging, hauling, living inside a mud and muck painting that no one wants to hang. But you'll keep going, because that's what peasants do. You're sitting in church on Sunday morning, but you're not resting. Not really. The stone benches are cold and unforgiving. The smell of wet wool, incense, and old floor rushes fills the air. Father Gregory is at the front, voice echoing off the damp walls as he launches into another sermon about eternal suffering and how it is actually good for you. You try to focus, but your mind drifts because your knees hurt your stomach's growling, and your brain is still trying to figure out if the man next to you farted or if that just the incense mingling with the scent of his feet. Church is technically a break from labor. You don't plow, bake, or haul anything on Sundays. But instead of sleeping in, you're expected to sit in this echo chamber of guilt, watching the priest wave his hands and tell you that poverty is noble, pain is cleansing, and you'll be rewarded after you're dead. Historians still argue how sincere medieval clergy were in practicing what they preached. Some priests were true shepherds, poor, kind, deeply connected to their flock. Others lived like mini-lords, collecting tithes with one hand while sipping honeyed wine with the other. Father Gregory, somewhere in between, he has 2 rooms in the stone rectory, owns books, which means he is practically a wizard by local standards, and rumor has it he gets dried figs from his cousin in the abbey. Dried figs. You've never even seen one. He eats them while talking about fasting. You glance around the nave. The stained glass windows, if your church has any, are cracked and grimy. The candlelight dances over grimy walls decorated with flaking saints and a terrifying mural of hell that looks suspiciously like your uncle after 2 tankards of cider. The sermon continues. You try not to fall asleep. Last time, your cousin's head bobbed forward and smacked into the pew ahead of him. Father Gregory made him stand in front of everyone while reading from Leviticus about sloth. It took 20 minutes. You all aged during that reading. The church is packed, peasants shoulder to shoulder, shifting uncomfortably, kids fidgeting, babies crying. One toddler is chewing on a candle stub. No one stops him. Everyone's too tired. You sigh and try to pretend you're praying. It's safer that way. Then come the announcements. Someone's ox has gone missing. The miller's wife had twins. The blacksmith's apprentice fell into the forge again. He survived, barely. The reeve warns about increased tithes next month, thanks to the bishop's upcoming visit. Great. After Mass, it's time for Community Matters. You shuffle outside into the muddy yard where the stocks are set up, already waiting for the week's miscreants. Today it's poor Edith, accused of swearing at her neighbor's pig. She protests, saying the pig swore first. No one laughs. One quirky medieval punishment. If a woman gossiped too loudly, she might be forced to wear a scold bridle, an iron muzzle with a metal tongue piece. Luckily, your village mostly sticks to stocks, public humiliation, and the occasional symbolic dunking. You slip away as soon as you can. Not because you're free, but because you have chores, even on the day of rest. Back home, your mother is boiling beans, your sister is mending a torn shift, and you're sent to fetch water. Again, the stream is muddy from the rain. You skim the top layer. Try not to think about what's beneath. You carry the bucket back, arms aching. So much for rest. You eat your meal, if 2 bowls of watery stew and a chunk of bread count, and sit by the fire, staring into it like it might give you answers. It doesn't. It just spits embers into the air and smells vaguely like burning hair. You think of the sermon, of Father Gregory's words. He says suffering is noble, that the poor are closer to heaven, that your pain is a test. You think about your tooth, about the rat you saw crawl under your bed, about how many more winters you can survive in a house made of mud and prayers. And you wonder, if heaven is the reward, why does it have to hurt this much to get there? Then someone knocks. It's the bailiff, with a list of names for next week's labor levy. Yours is on it, no surprise. That Sunday rest didn't last long, so you nod, thank him, why, and close the door. Tomorrow it all begins again. You married at 14, not because you were swept away by romance or wrote love poems under candlelight. No, you married because your parents made a deal with the family across the lane. They had land, well, a strip of it, and 3 goats. You had strong shoulders and no dowry. It balanced out. Your wedding was short, mostly an excuse to gather everyone in one place and drink ale that had turned slightly vinegary. The priest said a few words. Someone brought an old fiddle. You remember dancing barefoot in the mud and thinking, well, this is it. Romance in medieval peasant life wasn't the kind of stuff sung about by troubadours. It was practical, strategic. 2 people teaming up to survive another year. Love, if it came at all, usually arrived late and quietly, like moss growing on the same stone year after year. You and your spouse share everything, a bed stuffed with straw, a single patched blanket, and very little privacy. Your siblings sleep nearby, sometimes just a few feet away. You try to whisper at night, but even whispers carry in a one-room cottage. Historians still argue whether peasants truly lacked intimacy or simply found it in fleeting, quiet ways, stolen touches in the fields, shared smiles over a cooking pot, silent glances when the baby finally sleeps. You've learned to speak in gestures. In the absence of privacy, even a hand on the shoulder feels like a love letter. By the time you're 25, you've had 10 pregnancies. 4 lived. 1 still nurses. Your body is a map of bruises, stretch marks, and phantom pains. There's no midwife here, just your mother, some boiling water and hope. And yet childbirth is common, expected, almost automatic. You barely talk about it anymore. Just nod when someone says, "Again?" and brace yourself for the next cycle. You think back to that summer day, the first time your eldest came down with a fever. The heat never broke. You held him until he stopped crying, and then just held him for hours, until the candle burned out and you realized you couldn't feel your arms. One quirky belief you've clung to: placing a sprig of rosemary under the mattress keeps away death during childbirth. Every time you feel those early pains, someone runs to fetch the rosemary. It's nonsense, but no one dares skip it. Your children grow quickly, they have to. By the age of 5, they're gathering firewood. By 7, they can feed chickens, carry buckets, scare off crows. By 10, they work the fields like adults. School? Not here. Not unless the priest takes a strange liking to one of them and teaches them letters between chores. You're not holding your breath. You try to protect them, but protection is thin. When food runs short, you skip meals. When the fever comes, you pray, but you know that prayer won't fix the shaking or the color draining from their faces. So you do what your parents did. You keep going. Some nights, after everyone's asleep, you watch your youngest breathe. You count each breath and you tell yourself, "Tomorrow I'll find her a bit of honey, or a pear, or something sweet." But the pear tree died last spring, and honey is for the manna. And sweet is just a word from songs you half remember. Privacy, romance, love, they're luxuries. What you have is presence, 2 people surviving side by side, whispering beneath lice-ridden blankets, crying quietly over a stillborn, laughing over a shared crust, making each other less alone in a world built to grind you down. And somehow that's enough. It's Sunday again, which means no ploughing, but don't get excited. Day of rest in your world means something very different than it does in stories. After another sermon about your sinful nature and a vivid description of hellfire that suspiciously resembles your cottage in August, the villagers gather in the square. You're hoping to sneak off early, maybe nap, maybe fix the hole in the roof before the next storm. But today, the reeve has other plans. The stocks are being cleaned, someone's being punished. You glance over and realize it's Hal, the young shepherd boy with the missing tooth and fast mouth. You don't know what he did, but he is sitting with his head down while the village watches him like a dog on display. His mother is sobbing quietly in the background. This is how justice works here. You see, peasants don't get trials. There's no courtroom, no jury. Just the manor court, held under a big tree if the weather is nice, or in the Lord S. barn if it s not. The Lord Steward reads out offences, and punishments are decided in minutes, usually by whoever's in charge and hasn't had breakfast yet. Historians still debate whether this manorial justice system was brutal or simply efficient. From where you're standing, it feels like a coin toss with a bad outcome on both sides. Someone accused you once, said you stole turnips. You didn't. But that didn't stop the bailiff from dragging you in front of everyone and demanding you swear on the relic of St. Ethelbert. You swore loudly. You even offered to let them search your hut, which they did. Found nothing. Still, you spent an afternoon locked in the pig shed, just in case. One quirky punishment still used in nearby villages, the tulkucking stool, a wooden chair used to dunk someone into a pond. Originally for scolds and nagging women, now applied more creatively. You once saw old Rob dunked because he farted during a funeral. Hal's stuck in the stocks until sunset. People toss cabbage leaves at him. A few jeer. One old man says a prayer. Most just ignore him. That's how it works. Public shaming today, and tomorrow you're sharing stew with the same people. You head home. You pass the same muddy track, the same dying elm, the same hut with the crooked cross above the door. You wonder what it's like to live in a world with rules. Actual rules, not ones made up on the spot by men who sleep on feather mattresses. At home, your cousin's waiting. She's been accused of brewing ale without permission. Apparently, that's a crime now. She's hiding a small jug behind her apron and begging you to say it. It's yours if anyone asks. You nod. You'll take the hit. What's the worst they'll do? Stocks? Muck duty? You're already neck-deep in muck, literally and otherwise. Later that night, your mother lights a candle and whispers a prayer over your baby sister, who's burning with fever. She crushes dried herbs between her fingers, muttering that maybe the illness will pass. Maybe it won't. No one comes when a peasant child dies. There's no procession, no gravestone. Just a name spoken a little less each week until it vanishes completely. And so justice, like everything else in your world, is heavy, uneven, and a little absurd. You follow the rules not because they refair, but because breaking them puts you in the stocks next to Hal. And that cabbage leaf hit him hard. It's wash day, but don't let the word wash fool you. You don't have soap, not real soap. What you have is lye, burnt ashes mixed with water, and maybe some leftover goose fat from last week's cooking. It stings your hands and smells like scorched nightmares, but it gets the grime off. Sometimes, if you scrub hard enough, and you have to because your tunic is practically alive at this point, you wear the same clothes every day, not because you like them, but because you only have them. A tunic, maybe a second shift if you're lucky, and a single pair of hose that's more whole than fabric. You mend them constantly. The stitches are your own, jagged and uneven. You've named 3 of the patches. You dunk the tunic in a bucket of cold water hauled earlier from the stream. It's full of silt, floating bits of leaf, and possibly a frog. Doesn't matter. It's the best you've got. You add the lye, stir with a stick, and begin the long process of scrubbing, beating, and rinsing until your knuckles go numb, and your wrists feel like they've been chewed by badgers. Historians still argue whether medieval people actually cared about cleanliness. Some records show communal bathhouses in towns and regular washing as part of religious practice. Others point out that those luxuries didn't often reach the peasantry, and that even clean was a matter of perspective. In your world, clean means less filthy, not actually fresh. You remember the last time you tried to bathe. It involved stripping down, crouching in the stream, and praying the fish weren't watching. The water was freezing. You got 2 leeches on your ankle. You screamed loudly, woke up a crow. Still better than nothing. One quirky belief in your village: wearing linen under your tunic would keep you cleaner by soaking up sweat. But linen is expensive, so you just sweat into wool, which traps the smell forever. By now your clothes don't just smell like you, they are you. You dry your tunic on a branch. The sun peeks out just enough to give you hope, then ducks behind a cloud again like it's shy. You ring out your shift, hang it up, watch it drip into the mud. Your neighbor Marta strolls by, her own tunic stiff with soot. She waves, you nod. She's wearing a wreath of herbs. You ask why? She shrugs. Keeps away fleas, she says. You doubt it, but she looks peaceful. Maybe that's enough. You go back inside to change into your spare clothes, if you can call them that. The shift is older than your youngest brother. It smells like goat, and possibly is goat, judging by the patch on the shoulder. You scratch your scalp. Lice again. You'll have to burn your hairbrush if you had one. Instead, you'll rub in some ash and vinegar, tie it up tight, and hope for mercy. Later, you gather all the wash water and dump it outside, far from the cottage. Not because you care about drainage, but because last time you left it too close, the rats held a meeting there. Probably discussed overthrowing your pantry. And just when you sit down, thinking you've done something mildly productive, you notice a brown smear across your hem. You sniff it, you sigh. It's manure, again. So you peel it off, grab the lye, and start over. Because in your world, clothes never really get clean. They just get less cursed. You hear the shouting before you see the cart. Down near the market cross, 2 men are arguing. Loudly. One's red in the face, clutching a basket of eggs. The other's taller, pointing furiously at a turnip. From the way they're going at it, you'd think someone insulted the other's grandmother or saint or both. You get closer just in time to hear the taller one accuse the other of theft. "He took it. My last turnip," the accused stammers, gesturing at the basket like the vegetables might jump in and defend him. There's no constable, no real police force. Only the reeve, who shows up with a tired expression and a stick he never actually uses, but always holds like he might. He listens, grunts, scratches his beard, then says, "You'll both pay a fine, and you," he points to the Eggman, "get stocks till sunset." That's justice. Peasant justice isn't about what's fair. It is about what ends the argument fast and reminds everyone else to shut up and keep their heads down. Historians still debate whether local justice systems were intentionally harsh or just woefully underdeveloped. The truth? They were both. It wasn't about evidence or witnesses. It was about keeping peace, appearances, and occasionally the Lord's dinner schedule. You remember when your uncle got accused of taking a chicken? No proof, just rumors. He had to walk through the village with a sign that read, "Thief," tied to his back. Someone misspelled it as thief, but no one cared. For a week afterward, people kept clucking at him. He never smiled again. One quirky method of proof used in some parts: trial by hot iron. You carry a red-hot rod a few paces, then they wrap your hand and wait a few days. If it heals cleanly, you're innocent. If it festers, you're guilty. Science! Your village doesn't do that, but they do use oaths. You can swear on a saint's relic or the Bible if your village even owns one. Or you can get someone else to swear for you. It's called compurgation, basically a medieval character reference. Of course, if no one likes you, you're out of luck. Today, the reeve's bored, so he assigns Turnip Boy to 2 days of muck duty and a fine of 1 chicken payable by Thursday. The taller man walks off in triumph, cradling his vegetable like it's a newborn. You watch it all unfold, trying not to look interested. Being interested can get you involved. Later, back home, you find your youngest brother with a bruised arm and a sheepish look. He got into a fight over a wooden dice game behind the bakehouse. You patch him up, scold him gently, and hope no one reports it. You really can't afford another chicken. That night, the bailiff stops by with a scroll. He's making a list of able-bodied men for ditch digging next week. He glances around, sees your brother, and raises an eyebrow. "He's got 2 arms, he says. You step in. "He's got a fever." The bailiff shrugs. If it breaks, he digs. You close the door and exhale. No one is really safe, not from punishment, not from suspicion, and definitely not from being volunteered for the Lord's latest project. You sit by the fire, listening to the wind rattle the shutters. Peasant justice isn't about what's right. It's about what keeps the wheels turning. And your job? Stay small, stay quiet, and never touch someone else's turnip. You wake to silence, not peace, silence. And in your world, that's never a good sign. Your neighbor's door is shut. Her chimney doesn't smoke. The birds are quiet. The air feels wrong, still and sticky. You walk outside slowly, your feet dragging against the frost-hardened ground. Across the field, someone's cottage has its shutters drawn, even though it's nearly midday. You already know, before you even see the body. It started again. The sickness. They say it's not the plague, not this time. But you've heard that line before. First comes the fever, then the black spots, then the coughing, then the silence. It always ends with silence. You remember the last wave a few years back. It tore through the village like fire through dry straw. Children first, then the old, then everyone else. The priest stopped ringing the bell after the 12th funeral. After that, there were no more funerals, just burials. Historians still argue whether the later outbreaks of plague were as devastating as the first Black Death in the 14th century. But where you live, every outbreak feels like the plague. Every sickness carries the same weight. You go to check on Marta, the midwife. She's the one everyone turns to in times like this. Her door is open, her floor is covered in straw, her bed is empty. You find her outside, eyes glassy, muttering to herself and throwing dried lavender on a small fire. She won't look at you. Just keep saying, "Not again, not again." A quirky method of warding off plague. People burn herbs, lavender, sage, juniper, or wear little pouches of crushed flowers around their necks. You tie one around your wrist, just in case. You don't believe in it, but you also don't not believe. You return home and begin sealing the gaps in your shutters with mud and scraps of wool. You put a cloth over your mouth. You tell the children to stay inside. You boil water. For what you're not sure. The ox is coughing. You avoid the church. You avoid your neighbors. Everyone starts to pretend it's not happening. But you see it in their eyes, in the way they walk, fast and hunched, like they're trying to outrun death, like they know they won't. Then, one morning, you wake to find your cousin collapsed in the garden. She's pale, lips blue, eyes open. You bury her under the blackberry bush. No priest. Just a prayer mumbled into your sleeve and the sound of the wind moving through the branches like it trying to say something you were too tired to hear. Your brother gets a nosebleed that won't stop. You panic. You light a candle to Saint Sebastian, the one they say protects from pestilence. You promise to be better, to sin less, to stop stealing carrots from the field. You'd do anything, really. But your brother wakes up the next day complaining about the taste of your soup, and you cry with relief. You lose 6 people that month. Half your village is gone, but you're still standing. Hollowed maybe, tired, but breathing. And strangely, the fields still need tending, the cows still need milking, the firewood still has to be chopped. No one stops the world just because you're grieving. You're not given time, you're not given comfort. You're just given another day, one foot in front of the other, through the silence, through the fear. Because whether it's plague or fever or just a run of bad luck, the only thing you can really count on is that you'll keep going until you can't. It's the middle of winter now, and your breath fogs in the air even inside your cottage. There's barely any wood left. The small pile you stacked behind the house has been dwindled down to 3 damp logs and some sticks that may or may not be rat droppings. You toss one log on the hearth and watch it hiss weakly, then sigh as the flames flicker like they're apologizing for being so small. This is what you call the lean months. January, February, maybe March if the spring rains don't come early. It's the stretch of time where food is memory and hunger is your constant companion. Your larder? Empty. The last of the dried beans were used in last night's stew, if you could call watery onion broth a stew. There's still a single wheel of cheese hidden under a loose floorboard, but it's rock hard and smells like regret. You've been saving it. You don't know what for. You just need to know it's there. Today's breakfast is boiled barley, stretched with milk if your cow gave any. If not, water and salt. Or just water. Your children eat slowly. One picks through the bowl like they're hoping a roasted bird might appear. You watch them, biting your lip, pretending not to notice your own hunger growling in your gut like a caged wolf. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants were truly starving or simply undernourished in winter. But to you, the difference feels academic. Whether your belly is half full or completely empty, doesn't it change the fact that your fingers tremble and your joints ache from weakness? You go outside to scavenge. Some neighbors are digging under the snow for wild roots. Others are stripping bark off trees, drying it and grinding it into powder to stretch flour. You join them, though you doubt anything's left. Someone finds a frozen cabbage leaf. They cheer. You hate how jealous that makes you. You spot a dead hen near the edge of the village, frozen, stiff. You consider taking it. Then you see someone else already circling it. A boy, skinny, eyes sunken. You step back. He needs it more. Maybe. One quirky remedy for hunger pangs, chew on pine needles. They're bitter, but they distract your mouth. You gather a handful. Later, you'll pass them off to the kids as forest treats. You'll tell them it's what the elves eat. They might smile. They might not. Your dog hasn't barked in 2 days. She's curled up by the hearth like a shadow, barely moving. You give her the last crust of bread. She looks at you with dull eyes. She knows. She's seen this season before. At night, your family huddles together for warmth. not just for comfort, but survival. The youngest lies between you and your spouse. You all sleep in shifts, turning over like logs so that each side gets a turn by the fire. If someone coughs, you all wake up. You dream of apples, big red ones bursting with juice. You wake up with your mouth dry and your stomach cramping. You go outside, draw water from the frozen bucket, and drink until your teeth hurt. The days are short, the nights are long. The hunger is patient. It waits. It doesn't scream. It just taps you on the ribs, gently reminding you that your body is using itself to survive. You try to tell stories to the children, tales of summer, of roasted meat, of sweet cakes made from honey and ground almonds. You don't tell them those cakes were something you read about once, meant for nobles or maybe monks on festival days. You just tell the stories, because stories are the only thing that fill you up. You smell yourself before you even get out of bed. It's not subtle. It's not something you can ignore. It's the ripe, unmistakable aroma of a person who hasn't bathed in over a month, layered in sweat, smoke, mud, and something less definable that you've learned not to question. You shift under the blanket, scratch at your arm, and realize there's something moving in your tunic. A quick inspection confirms your suspicions. Lice again. You sigh, pick two off your collar, flick them into the fire, and try not to think about how many more are nesting in the seams. You haven't had a real bath since midsummer, and that one was in a stream you later found out the cows use as a toilet. But it's not like anyone else smells like roses. The whole village walks around with the same baked-in layer of grime. It's part of the atmosphere, like the church bell or the sound of dogs barking at shadows. You just live in it. Historians still argue how often medieval peasants bathed. Some say it was surprisingly regular, once a week even, especially in warmer climates. Others point out that by winter, rivers were frozen and bathhouses were expensive or non-existent in small villages like yours. So you go months without washing more than your hands, face, and occasionally your feet. Speaking of feet, yours currently smell like a boiled turnip left in a cellar for 3 weeks. You take your boots off slowly, cautiously, like you're defusing a bomb. The toe on the left is blackened, maybe from the cold, maybe from rot. You sniff, regret it instantly, but you still put the boot back on. It's safer that way. Your clothes? You've been wearing the same tunic since before the harvest. You've patched it so many times, it looks like a quilt made of sadness. You can't remember what color it used to be. Now it's a shade of brown, best described as earth-adjacent. And the smell, oh, the smell. It's not just you. The entire village carries it like a badge of survival. Wood smoke, wet wool, fermented onion, urine, a hint of despair. You're nose-blind to most of it by now, but newcomers, when there are any, flinch like they've walked into a tavern privy during a heat wave. One quirky medieval tactic for dealing with body odor: carry a pomander, a little ball filled with herbs, spices, and dried flowers. Nobles had fancy ones made of silver. You, on the other hand, crush a sprig of mint into your armpit and hope for divine intervention. You once heard a merchant describe a bathhouse in the city, with steam, clean towels, and something called soap that smells like lemons. You didn't believe him. Lemons sound fake, like dragons or good luck. Today you decide to do what you call a field wash. You strip to your shift, grab a bucket of water and stand behind the hut, scrubbing yourself with a rag dipped in near-freezing liquid. You yelp with every splash, teeth chattering, goosebumps rising like rebellion. You scrub your arms, your neck, your knees. You avoid your hair. It's beyond redemption. You wash fast like you're being chased by winter itself. When you're done, you stand there dripping and miserable, wondering if it was even worth it. But for a few fleeting minutes, you feel almost human. You dry off with a sackcloth and dress in your second tunic, which smells slightly less like goat. You rub your arms, sigh, and glance at the sky. Cleanliness may be next to godliness, but in your case, it's mostly just next to freezing. Still, you feel a little lighter, and that's worth something. The rooster doesn't crow this morning. You do. A raspy cough drags you awake, your throat raw and chest tight. You sit up slowly, joints creaking like old hinges. The fire's gone out, again. The frost on the inside of the window glimmers like someone painted it there, only colder and far less poetic when you can't feel your toes. You look around at your family. Your youngest is curled up in a ball, buried under a pile of rags. Your mother's lips are blue. Your father didn't move when you coughed. You watch his chest. Wait, there it is, a breath, barely. Outside, a bell tolls. It's not the church bell. It's the little one, the handheld one, the one they only ring when someone's died. You don't even ask who, because death is a neighbor here. Quiet, familiar, not always cruel, sometimes just tired. You rise slowly, carefully. Your back groans, your knees ache. Your hands look like they belong to a much older person. Your breath fogs in front of you, and you whisper thanks just for seeing it. Breakfast is non-existent. There's nothing left but the rind of a carrot and a prayer you mumbled into your sleeve last night. You chew on both, then spit out the prayer. It wasn't very filling. You go outside, not because you want to, but because the animals still need feeding. If they're still alive, you don't hear the cow, you don't see the chickens, the dog is gone, you don't call for her, you already know. Historians still argue about average life expectancy in medieval times. 35? 40 if you're lucky. You're not even sure how old you are anymore. There were no candles on cakes, no birthday songs. You only measured years by who died, which harvest failed, and whether you could afford salt that month. Your neighbor's cottage is empty. The door swings open in the wind. You don't go in. There's nothing to find but quiet. You trudge down to the fields, not to work, but to feel the sun on your face. It's low, pale, but warm enough to thaw the tips of your fingers. You close your eyes. Pretend. For just a moment, you're not a peasant. You're not starving. You're not aching, itching, or worrying about a cough that won't quit. You're just breathing, and maybe that's all you get. There's a kind of beauty in that, even in the mud, even in the pain. You return home, sit by the hearth and press your hands to your chest. You listen to your heart, slow and steady, like it still believes in tomorrow, and maybe it does. The fire's low now, just embers, faint orange against the dark. The air has settled, no wind, no rats scurrying, no crying children, just stillness. And maybe that's the quietest miracle of all. You lie back on your straw bed, close your eyes, and let your breath soften. Your muscles release, not from comfort, but surrender. You've survived another day, another season, another story. Maybe that's enough. Your mind drifts. Back to the fields in summer, the golden sway of barley under a blue sky. You remember laughter once, though you can't place who it belonged to. The scent of bread, fresh from a village oven, wafts in. Impossible, maybe imagined, but warm and real enough to calm your stomach. And you float there for a while, in between then and now, in between the ache and the peace. Because being a peasant was hard, but you made it through the rain, through the rot, through the silence and the shouting and the long winters that never seemed to end. And now, here in the dark, you rest, wrapped in wool and memory, and breath slow, even, soft. Sleep comes easy now, the kind you've earned, the kind that doesn't need permission. So drift slowly, quietly, let the story fade, and dream of bread and fire and summer sun on your face. You made it. Good night.